welcome to ZeroBudgetTech.com's video training series on creating professional document layouts using only free and open source software. Today we're going to talk about creating document styles for pages, page styles, and paragraph styles, and perhaps if we have time, a little bit about choosing the right font for a particular document. But let's start with styles. So in order to access the style dialog, you can click on F11. That will give you sometimes a floating dialog box, or if you like, you can move it back and forth or anchor it to the side and it'll give you a sidebar. If you want to bring it back to become again a floating box, you can just drag it to the left or drag it back to the right. It'll again become a sidebar. I usually prefer to leave it as a sidebar. Now you'll see there are 5 categories of styles at the top. We're worried only really about 2. The one on the left is paragraph styles and page styles. Let's begin though looking at paragraph styles. Now why do we want to control paragraph styles? Well, imagine we're working with a large document with say 100 pages of text, hundreds and hundreds of paragraphs, 40,000 words. There might be images, there might be headings and subheadings and sub-subheadings. Suppose you want to change the size of the font of your default text, that is the text in all of your normal paragraphs, but you don't want to change all the others. Well, it's not a simple thing at all. If you can only work manually on each paragraph or each word, you'd have to highlight a whole paragraph and hope that you get exactly the text you want, and then right click or go through the menu system to figure out how to make the font larger or smaller, and that in order to get only that particular paragraph and not the other sections, the other type styles that you want to avoid. Then you'd have to do that for each paragraph in the entire document. That's not practical. So instead, let's try modifying the style. Let's left click on default and select modify, and we see I have a dialog containing a great many values that you can assign to this particular style. Let's say we want to make the text a little smaller, bring it down to 11 point. Let's apply that, and behind the dialog you can actually see the text just got a lot smaller, a little bit smaller. That really wasn't all that useful though, considering how little text we have here. Let's however create a different type of text. Let's create a heading. Let's type in the word heading. Let's highlight it, and let's double click on the heading word, the setting for heading in the styles dialog, and we now see that it's bigger and bold. Let's take a look by right clicking, then selecting modify. We see the font for heading is Arial, the style is bold, and the size is 115% of the normal text size from this document. That defines this particular text style. Now we can change the font size, let's say, of all of our default text without affecting the status of heading. You can imagine how useful this would be in the long term. Let's modify the default heading. Let's make it even smaller, bring it down to 10 point and apply that. And we see that heading hasn't been affected. While the other 3 paragraphs are all much smaller, heading is just the way it was. Now let's turn our attention for a bit to page styles. Why do we care about page styles? What's the benefit in controlling them? Well, let's think, for instance, as an example that we're going to use in our own book, about the first page in a chapter. You may have noticed in books you've seen, and hopefully you've read some books, that the first page of a chapter very often does not have headers or footers. There's no page number at the bottom a lot of the time, and there's no information at the top like the title of the book or the title of the chapter. How do you control the behavior of a particular page? So let's say we assign the value of right page to every first page in a chapter. We'll see later why that's a good idea, and we'll learn how to do it. Now, we want the right page always to have no page numbers and no headers that contain book information. We can control this by right-clicking on Right Page, select Modify. Let's move to the page information. We can control the size and the margins, which we're not really interested in right now. We'll later look at the organizer. That's very important. But let's look at the header. We can turn headers on or leave them as they were, header off, which is exactly what we want. Footers also, footer on, footer off. Once we've turned those off, there won't be any page numbers and there won't be any headers in the first page of each chapter, assuming that we've assigned Right Page to be the first page of a chapter. Now, we also want to control the behavior of the next style, the next page after the first page of a chapter. We could define it as it is by default as left page, but that may not suit our purposes perfectly. We'd like it to revert to the default style. We'd like that every page after a Right Page should follow the default. It should be like every other standard text page in the book. We can do this by assigning the default value to next style. That controls the flow of page styles through the book. I think this can give you a pretty good idea of the power and control you get over large documents by using style. Now let's talk a little bit about fonts. Then I'm going to give you a new page, to just not because we really need it right now, just to give us a nice clean canvas to work with though. I used Control Enter to create that hard page return. And let's give it work with a bigger font, so it'll be easier to see the differences between the different font styles. And I'm going to write, oh well, I don't really know how to spell just yet, capital A, capital B, small b. Didn't quite work out well either. I'm learning the alphabet slowly though, and it's going okay. So we have some examples of Liberation sans. Sans is without. It really means sans serif. That is without the serif, the little notches and curls that some letters have. So Liberation Sans is the Linux version of Arial. It's a widely used font in the computer world and in the publishing world that is sans serif. For small documents like a poster or a resume, a sans serif font like Arial or like Liberation Sans is probably the type of font you should go for. However, there's another family of fonts called serifed fonts that in Linux is called Liberation Serif, and in the larger world, larger printing world, is often used or is often called Times New Roman. It's not really true that it's called Times New Roman. There is a font created by the New York Times many years ago called Times New Roman that we, I suppose you could say, imitate. It's a darn good font for applying to large bodies of text. It just flows easier. It's easier on the eyes. So let's change our font to Liberation Serif, which again is with the curls and the notches, the vertical lines in the C you see, and the little feet for the A. I think you get a good sense of the difference between the two font families, the serif fonts and the sans serif fonts. To get a better feel for it, perhaps you might want to take a look through the internet or your own word processor, or just browse through books and see how various font faces are used to give a different experience for reading, to allow the eye to flow quickly to the right or maybe downwards. In a particular case, that might be what you're after. We've, in this video, looked at fonts, and previously, of course, before that, we looked at styles, that very important subject which will provide you with a great deal of control over the documents, and especially the bigger documents that you're going to work on. It'd be a good idea to look through on your own those tools to again get a better feel for how you're going to use them in your own projects. I hope to see you next video.